It's been about 9 years since Lillian Katiso started her business here in Kampala. From hydrangeas to orchids, bougainvillea to bonsais, aloe to cacti, Katiso's business is a one-stop shop for all things gardening.
When I started out, I was calling it green gifts and gardening because people buy bouquets that die within a week. If you give someone an orchid, it stays for a long time. Any plant you give someone keeps on growing. I say it's the gift that keep on giving. Most of these plants pots have saucers. So I had so many saucers, a stack of saucers, that I was like, what do I do with these saucers? Because there are like just so many. So I was just playing words with them on the ground. So I wrote the word maua with the saucers. So there were 4 letters there. So I'm like, okay, so what else can I write? Then I put more down here. I'm like, okay, it's maua, flowers, and more, because I'm going to sell flowers and more.
Currently, Maua and More has 3 outlets in Uganda, quite ideal given that Uganda is considered one of the fastest growing economies in East Africa with heavy reliance on agribusiness.
I have about 5,000 species. I was growing from what I had in my garden. When I opened the first outlet, I also grow from my garden to sell. But then, because the business was growing, the speed at which we were selling was faster than the speed at which the plants were growing. So I had to now buy from other people at the nurseries to sell. And then as the clients grew, our clients needed more. It's like, if you love plants, it's like an addiction. Initially, it was for the homeowner buying just for their home. But then over time, now we have the corporates coming say, okay, now, you know, there's all this thing about greening your spaces. So we've had people come and say, okay, let's do a space at our, like, green our office. So for example, Stanbic had a nice design they did for their place for, I think, a visitor's lounge, or like a wall of plants, which was nice. So we had banks, we had Total doing all the 4 floors of one of their coast view offices. So they had like each office having a pot somewhere. Some of the plants, the indoor plants, are actually air purifying. So they purify the air in the office, but also just brings, as we call it, positive vibes in the workspace. Yeah. So people are really embracing that. And then we also have hotels that also who want unique plants, not the common plants.
Now, you'll be surprised to learn that Lillian is actually an accountant by training with a degree from Daystar University, Athi River campus. This is what she did initially upon arriving in Uganda back in 2003.
When I came to Uganda, I came because I had gotten married. And my husband now was working and living in Uganda. And I believe when you get married, you go and, you know, you choose one country to be in, and we chose to be in Uganda. And so I came in September. I stayed home the whole month trying to understand, you know, the language, the currency, everything, the food, everything was just strange. So I stayed September, October. Then I was fortunate, by God's grace, I got a job. I still remember on the 10th of November 2003, I got my first job in Uganda as an accountant as well. So that's when my career in Uganda started. My first job was a connection from my former employer. So he told me, you take your CV to this person in case he knows where you can be employed, then you try your luck. So I went, took my CV to this particular company. Coincidentally, they had put an advert for an accountant that was running, and the deadline was the following day from seeing him. So if you can put in your application before tomorrow, we can consider it. So I went home, did my application and submitted it and waited for the interview. So I went for the interview in September. So they interviewed me and I was fortunate I got the job, and that's how I started. It was a management consultancy firm. So I started there as an accountant. I worked there for 9 years, different roles. As an accountant, assistant finance manager, financial consultant.
After the 9 years had elapsed, Lillian found herself headhunted by another company. This was through social media. Yes, the opportunity came courtesy of LinkedIn.
So they got my contacts on LinkedIn and got my number, and they asked me, are you interested in this particular offer? That firm is NFT Consult, so they do recruitment. So I accepted to go for the interview. I got the job. So I worked there for 3.5 years. And when I was working there, I would go to Monday to Friday, I'll be working at people's businesses, helping them setting up financial systems, training them and all that. And so I enjoyed doing that. But it was an NGO, it was an international NGO that was having funding from Irish Aid. Then the funding ended. I had a 5-year contract, but it was subject to funding. So 3.5 years down the line, the funding for my project came to an end. So that is how I transitioned, and I said, okay, maybe now is the time to now go into consulting.
So, how did she eventually end up in gardening?
I was reading the papers and I found someone who had done a story about someone who was growing herbs, and herbs in pots. And I was like, that's nice. Someone growing herbs in pots, and they're very unique herbs. I've not seen them before. And I didn't know many people who do that. So I wrote to the editor to ask for the contact of the person they featured. Because I thought I would go, we exchanged notes because I loved gardening. They directed me, gave me a contact of someone else who was selling them. But on the same email thread, someone asked for strawberries. I happened to be having strawberries at home. I was growing them at home. So I said, I can give you strawberry seedlings. So this lady, the one who wrote that article, came home for the strawberry seedlings. So when she came home, she was like, wow, you've done a lot with your small space, like all the plants that I did. So she asked me, do you mind if I write a story about your garden? Then one day someone asked me if I sell plants. So now for me, I wasn't selling plants, I was just posting for the fun of it. So I thought, okay, maybe I can start selling the plants.
Talk about serendipity. Before long, Lillian's business received national attention and was being featured in newspapers in Uganda. She was also featured as one of the 40 under 40 inspiring and influential women in Uganda.
All the staff are Ugandans. So at the shops, we are 10 at the shops. But then we also have a farm where we have the nursery. There are now 9 at the farm. We have some projects that we do. Construction companies engage us to do like landscaping for their projects. We have about 8 staff there as well. So the first outlet that we had became small, and we opened the second outlet in Bukoto Street. So I kept on needing like more space as it grew, because when I started out, it was just more like a hobby that I was trying out. And then the management of Garden City, they called me to do a Saturday flower market. So we did that, so we set up that outlet. September 2018 is when we opened that one. Then the space became small, so we needed more space. Then we opened, this is the second outlet. This was a flower bed that they allowed us to convert into a shop. So we opened this one in January 2021. And then last year, December, we opened another outlet at Metroplex Mall in Alia.
To keep up with demand, Lillian sources some of her plants from various countries around the world.
There are some we get from Netherlands, there are some we get from Thailand. So depending on which type of plant that we need.
Lillian has been able to balance her finance consultancy and training businesses as well as her gardening with ease. The Nanyuki native is truly living her diaspora dream.
Sitting behind a desk, I found it was boring. I felt like I needed something more challenging than just doing accounting and all that. And I liked going to the clients, finding out their problems, solving their problems. I found that was very interesting. Then I discovered I loved training people.
Yes, Lillian is definitely a Jill of all trades and an example of what one can achieve when you take full advantage of your opportunities. Her parting shot: don't be afraid to shoot your shot.
So I think for every sector, you might find the sector is already there, but what are the gaps in the sector that you can improve? I think there's always something that you can improve. They say Kenyans have good service. They still say that they bring people from Mutali for all their hotels. So it means there's something good that we have. I think the standard of doing business in Kenya is high. The standard of doing business here is still very low. So you can always go to any sector and improve it.